I was in the parking deck behind my office when the phone buzzed. The kind of buzz that doesn't ask permission because it already owns your attention. And when I looked down, it was Clara. Her name sitting there like a headline I already knew I didn't want to read, and under it the message: "We need a break. Don't contact me." For years reduced to a push notification. Not even a period after me. Just a hard stop inside the words, and for a full breath I watched the screen go dark and felt nothing. Not shock, not heat, just the clean quiet you hear before a machine starts. Because that's what I am when things fail. A man who flips to procedures and steps while everyone else argues about feelings. I typed "all right," sent it, and slid the phone into my pocket because I know leverage when I see it, and I know what it means when someone wants a break with rules attached, and it doesn't mean reconsideration or respect, it means control. It means you sit where you're told until they decide you've been obedient long enough to be let out again, and I've never been obedient in my life to anything except the truth and the plan. The elevator smelled like coolant and tired coffee, and in that small box I took inventory the way I always do. What's at risk, what's recoverable, what needs to be shut down before it bleeds. The wedding wasn't love. The wedding was a project with moving parts, dependencies, critical paths, burn rates, choke points, and too many of those parts sat in my name because Clara's mother liked to wave from the captain's chair and have someone else hold the wheel. So I started mentally flagging the contracts, the deposits, the deadlines ticking toward October, and I felt the anger climb like a steady engine coming to temperature. Not screaming, not rattling the frame, just the kind of heat that tells you the pistons are doing their job. On the drive home, I kept my hands at 10 and 2 and let the city roll by in straight lines and hard edges. And the radio stayed off because I didn't need a song telling me how to feel. I needed silence to measure the problem. The first rule in a failure is to stop the loss. The second rule is don't let the people who caused it dictate the pace. I had already broken their script with 2 words. Now I would break the rest of it with actions they wouldn't see until the doors had already closed. In the apartment, her sweater still hung on the back of the dining chair, a soft reminder that she thought she could pause me and keep her place, as if my life was a show she could turn off mid-scene and expect the actors to freeze in place. And that's when the anger put its back into me. Not a surge but a brace, because there's a special kind of disrespect in the command, "Don't contact me," wrapped in a tone that assumes you'll wait like a good boy while she tries on freedom in the mirror. I opened the closet, pulled down the wedding binder we'd built across months of weekends, and set it on the table like a ledger of a company going under. The tab said Grand Tyrian Hotel. I slid a sticky note over it and wrote in block letters, "Project Dissolution." But I didn't call anyone yet because men who act fast for the sake of acting fast make mistakes, and I don't make mistakes when it counts. I made coffee, sat, and wrote the mission in 1 line on a legal pad. Exit with dignity. Minimize losses, retain control. Under it I drew 3 boxes and labeled them: contracts, assets, communications. It looked cold, maybe, but love that respects you doesn't arrive by text with a gag order. And whatever we had before that message wasn't the thing I would defend today. The communicator in me wanted to demand why, to force a reason out of her, to make her say the words that would either end it or expose the lie. The man in me, the one who has been around long enough to know a test when he sees one, recognize that reasons don't matter when someone cancels your voice as a condition. I could call and beg for context, and I would lose power and self-respect, or I could accept the terms and build my own. I chose the latter, and the choice settled me like weight on a foundation. By sundown, I'd gone through the apartment and identified every object that mattered to me and to my family, set aside the rest in a mental inventory for later. I took my grandmother's ring from the top dresser drawer, the heirloom we had given Clara with ceremony and gratitude, and placed it in my palm for a long minute. It carried the kind of history that doesn't tolerate games, and I decided then it wouldn't be used as a lever or a trophy. I slipped it into a small velvet box and wrote a note to myself to secure a safe deposit first thing in the morning. When the phone buzzed again, unknown number, then silence, I let it go. I pictured Clara somewhere with her mother's voice in her ear and a glass of celebration in her hand, proud of her boundaries, confident I would be waiting when she permitted contact again. Let them be confident. Confidence is easy when you don't understand the man you're testing. That night I slept. Not long, not deeply, but steady, because the decision was made and the steps were clear. In the morning I would start the calls, and by Friday the machine would be winding down. She asked for a break and no contact. I would give her both in full. Morning came like a shift whistle. I showered, shaved, and dressed like I was going to work because I was not to plead or negotiate, but to shut down a project. I made a fresh pot of coffee, opened the laptop, and pulled up the binder's digital twin. Timelines, contact sheets, deposit ledgers, cancellation clauses I'd highlighted months ago and hoped never to need. I retitled the folder to match the paper binder. Project Dissolution. That felt correct, final, impersonal, and mine. First call. The Grand Tryon Hotel. I'd met the sales manager twice. She liked my punctuality and Clara's taste. When she answered, I kept it simple. This is Leo Carter. I'm canceling our October booking. Contract numbers in your system. Hawthorne Carter, Ballroom B. She started the sympathy script. This must be a hard decision. We can move your date. And I cut it off with a steady tone. No new date. Cancel and confirm. I understand the forfeited deposit. A pause, keys clicking, then her voice softening when she realized I wasn't bargaining. All right, Mr. Carter. I'll send the cancellation and release. The deposit is non-refundable. Understood, I said. Rebook the date. Someone else can use the room. I meant it. I didn't want the spot on hold for us like a shrine to a plan that died by text. Second call. The photographer, a guy named Pierce who shot for magazines when he wasn't doing weddings. He answered from a windy sidewalk. I told him the same thing. He offered a credit. Keep the retainer, I said. You earned it by being ready. He went quiet. You're the calmest groom I've ever heard cancel. Calm is cheaper than chaos, I said. We both understood the math. Third, the caterer. Their contract had a sliding scale. Lose 30% if canceled by X date, 50% by Y. We were at 30%. I took the hit. While she processed the refund, she tried to fish for drama. Is everything okay? It's simple, I said. The partnership ended. I'm tying off lines before they snap. People can handle clean statements. It saves them from inventing gossip. Fourth, the florist. She'd been Clara's favorite, big archways. Peonies with names like Heirloom and Blush. She spoke in exclamation points. Oh, Leo, we can pivot to something intimate. A winter elopement. Magnolia leaves. Cancel, please. Send the release. A beat, then professionalism returned. Of course. Fifth, the string quartet. They were the only ones who sounded genuinely disappointed. I'd heard them rehearse once. Bach in a church hall, the music landing like discipline. The leader said, "We'll mark the date available again. If you ever need us for something else, call." That landed better than any apology would have. By 10:40 a.m., the big pieces were off the board. I logged each confirmation, attached PDFs, saved email threads, and updated the total loss column in the ledger. 12,000 burned. Cheaper than buying more rope to hang myself with later. I sent all the confirmations to a fresh alias I'd created for this shutdown and backed everything up to a drive tucked in my desk. Project manager habits. Assume power fails. Keep a local copy. I locked the apartment, pocketed the velvet box with my grandmother's ring, and drove to the bank. The teller recognized me from the mortgage and asked about the wedding in the polite way people do when they want to feel part of something happy. Plans changed, I said, and slid the box across on a folded deposit form. Safe deposit, please. The steel door swung open and the vault air hit cool and metallic. I placed the ring in a small safe box and wrote the inventory in block letters. Conditional gift. Retained by donor. The clerk didn't need to read it. I wrote it for myself. On the way out, I added a note in my phone. If asked, the ring is secure. Do not discuss location. Back home, I gathered the physical evidence of a life paused mid-sentence. Sample invitations in cream and navy, swatches of fabric, a seating chart Clara and her mother had argued over like it was a territorial map. I dropped everything into a banker's box and labeled it archive. No action. If Clara ever wanted to claim her mementos, there would be a clean handoff. She would not accuse me of pettiness. I was not petty. I was done. My phone lit with messages from numbers I didn't recognize. Hi Leo, this is Stephanie from... Just confirming we've released. Per your request. and I batched them into one folder and one line in the ledger. I ate a sandwich over the sink, the way I do on overhaul days because chairs and plates make it feel like you're staging a mood. I didn't want moods. I wanted outcomes. In the afternoon, I reviewed contingencies. The apartment lease was in my name. The utilities, my name. The honeymoon flights I'd booked with points. I canceled and reclaimed what I could. The registry, Clara and her mother had arranged it as a performance piece, but it ran through an account tied to my email. I shut it down with a single click and a final confirmation screen that made a little confetti animation, which felt obscene considering the subject matter. I stared at it until the confetti vanished. Then I closed the tab. I called my father. He's a plain man with a mechanic's hands, retired now, restless in a quiet house. I kept it short. Weddings off. No health scare. No disaster. Just a text and a response. I'm okay. He was silent for a beat. You need me to come down? No, I said. It's under control. He grunted. An old country sound that can mean I'm proud of you and I hate this for you in the same breath. All right, he said. You call if that changes. I will. He knew I wouldn't unless there was a fire. The only call I didn't make that day was to Clara. Not once. I followed her directive to the letter, not out of pettiness, but because words mean something and silence can be a mirror you make a person stand in front of. She'd see herself there soon enough, without any help from me. By sundown, I had a short list left. Tux rental? Cancelled. Rehearsal dinner? Cancelled. Guest notifications? Unnecessary. No date survives without a venue. I printed a one-page summary. Status, terminated. Cost, $12,000. Recovered. Miles of self-respect. It made me laugh once, dry and short. I slid the paper into the front sleeve of the binder and put the binder away. I walked the apartment the way a foreman walks a floor after the crew leaves. Eyes on corners and edges, noting what's sound and what needs patching. Her shoes still lined the bottom of the hall closet like commuters at a bus stop. I didn't touch them. There would be a day for boxing them. That day would have rules and a witness. For now, I left everything where it stood and turned off the lights. Before bed, I set my phone on Do Not Disturb and placed it face down. She wanted a break and no contact. I had given her both and I had my own version of the word break. Not a pause, but a severing. Contracts can be rewritten. Character reveals cannot. Tomorrow would take care of itself because I had taken care of it today. It was 4 weeks to the day since Clara's text when the phone rang with her name on the screen. I was on the balcony, coffee cooling in my hand, watching traffic crawl under the morning sun. I let it buzz twice, 3 times, then answered. Her voice came through light, breezy, like nothing had happened. Hey, stranger. So, I think I'm ready to start planning again. Ready, like I'd been idling at the curb waiting for her to wave me forward. She spoke as if the last month had been a scheduled intermission, not a demolition. I didn't speak right away, just let her words hang. Silence makes people explain themselves. Sure enough, she chuckled nervously. I mean, I needed a breather, you know? But I've thought it over, and October is still perfect. Mom says the hotel might be able to hold the room. We should pick it back up. That was the moment I realized she truly believed she'd frozen me in place. Like I was a show paused on her remote. My answer was steady. Every contract in my name is gone, Clara. The Grand Tryon rebooked weeks ago. Photographer, caterer, quartet. They're all off the table. The wedding doesn't exist anymore. The silence that followed was different, sharp, ragged. Then came the crack in her voice. What do you mean, gone? Leo, you canceled? Why would you? I didn't raise my tone. I didn't need to. You told me not to contact you. I followed instructions. The partnership ended and I shut down the project. That's what a responsible man does when the other partner walks out. Her calm facade broke like glass under a hammer. She shrieked about deposits, her dress fittings, her mother's friends who'd already booked flights. Do you have any idea how this makes me look? People will think. They'll think the truth. I cut in. That you quit. And when someone quits, they don't get to come back and issue commands. Her outrage went volcanic. You did this out of spite. Admit it. No, I said. I did it out of logic. 12,000 lost was better than 40. I won't run projects on someone else's whims. You wanted silence. That's exactly what you got. She sputtered, looking for a foothold. Mom will fix this. She'll call the hotel. She'll talk to the vendors. You can't just. She can try, I said. But the October slot is gone. Saturdays don't sit empty for anyone. Your mother doesn't control calendars. The shriek in her voice shifted to something closer to panic, as if she was realizing the ground beneath her wasn't made of clouds but stone, and she'd walked off the edge. I didn't indulge her with comfort or anger. I ended it the same way I had begun. Controlled, simple, final. This conversation is over, Clara. Take care of yourself. I hung up and set the phone face down on the table. Across the street, a man was sweeping his stoop, slow and steady, every stroke clearing dust from the concrete. That's what I felt like I was doing, sweeping the last of the illusion away. Clara had mistaken confidence for control. She thought I'd wait with my hands in my pockets. Instead, I'd already moved on. For the first time in weeks, I smiled. Not out of triumph, but out of clarity. The break wasn't hers anymore. It was mine. An hour after Clara's meltdown on the phone, my building's buzzer sounded like a fire alarm. I ignored it at first, assuming deliveries, but the pounding started next, sharp, rhythmic, entitled. When I checked the peephole, it was Clara and her mother, Genevieve, both dressed like they'd come from brunch with an agenda. Clara's face was blotched red from anger. Genevieve's was stone, the kind of look that assumes the world will bend under it. I slid the chain across the door before opening it. The smell of their perfume hit like artillery. Genevieve spoke first, her voice dripping with command. Leo, open this door right now. We need to talk. No, I said plainly. Chain stays on. You can talk from there. Clara lunged forward, eyes wild. You ruined everything. Do you know how humiliated I am? Do you know what people are saying? Probably that you canceled an engagement by text and expected the groom to wait. I said, voice flat. That's on you, not me. Genevieve cut in, waving a manicured hand like she was swatting a servant. You'll fix this, Leo. You'll call the vendors back, get the hotel to reinstate the booking, and you'll return the ring. That ring is Clara's, and you have no right to hold it hostage. The anger inside me stayed cold, controlled. Conditional gift, I said. Legal definition. No marriage, no ring. My grandmother's heirloom is in a safe deposit box. It isn't coming back into this hallway. Clara shrieked. You can't do this to me. I leaned closer, my eye level with the chain. I didn't do this to you. You did it to yourself the moment you typed that text. I just responded like a man who takes words seriously. Genevieve's mask cracked then, her voice turning venomous. You think you can embarrass my family? You think anyone will side with you when people find out you abandoned her? I didn't abandon her, I said, steady as steel. She asked for silence. I delivered it. Now you're here asking for access to my home, my life, my family's ring, as if entitlement is a currency. It isn't. Clara pounded the doorframe with her fist. You don't get to just walk away. That made me laugh once, low. Clara, you're not used to men who mean what they say. I'm not walking away. I'm closing the door. I shut it slow, the chain rattling as I drew it tight, and their voices rose into a chorus of threats, pleas, and insults that bounced off the wood and echoed down the hall. I stood there on the other side, calm heartbeat, steady breathing, until the noise faded into footsteps and finally silence. The line had been drawn, and they hated that it wasn't on their terms. For years, Clara had believed I was pliable, that my quiet was my weakness. That afternoon, she and her mother learned what it really was: control. I poured myself a glass of water, sat back on the couch, and wrote in my legal pad. Doorstep incident, chain secured, refused access, ring retained. Documentation always, because this wasn't over. They'd be back, louder, dirtier, and I'd be ready. The first shot landed less than 24 hours after the doorstep scene. My father called, voice low and uneasy. Leo, I just got off the phone with Genevieve. She said you're having a breakdown, that you canceled the wedding in some fit and won't answer Clara's calls. Son, what the hell's going on? I could picture him. Old boots on the porch, phone pressed against his ear, brow furrowed the way it did when the carburetor didn't sound right. He's a man who trusts evidence, not gossip, but Genevieve knew what she was doing. She wanted him unsettled, doubting. Dad, I said evenly, I'm fine. Clara ended the engagement by text. I handled the logistics, that's it. No breakdown, no scandal. Don't let her spin you. Silence. Then his grunt, half relief, half fury. That woman, he stopped himself. All right, son, I believe you. Just don't let them rattle you. Rattle me? Not a chance. But I knew more was coming. The second shot came mid-morning. HR called me into a conference room. A complaint had been filed, anonymous but detailed. I was volatile, unpredictable, bringing personal issues into the workplace. The kind of language that could stick if handled wrong. The HR manager, a woman named Dana, slid the paper across the table, watching me like I was a live wire. Leo, we just want to check in. Is everything all right at home? Controlled anger is a useful tool. It steadies the voice, sharpens the eyes. Everything's fine at home, I said. My ex-fiancé's mother is upset that the wedding is off. She's calling family with lies. And now, apparently, she's trying to poison my career. I came prepared. I slid a folder across the table. The wedding binder summary, the text from Clara, the cancellation confirmations, even a time-stamped email to my father documenting the doorstep confrontation. Receipts in every sense. Dana read silently, then leaned back, her expression changing. This matches what we've seen, organized, documented. Honestly, Leo, this doesn't read like a man in crisis. It reads like someone managing a mess. Exactly, I said. This is a personal dispute spilling into professional ground. I want the record to reflect that I'm calm, stable, and focused. She closed the folder, nodding. We'll close this out as unfounded. Thanks for your transparency. I left the office cool as stone. They wanted me rattled, humiliated, explaining myself to authority figures like a child. Instead, I walked out stronger. The Hawthorns thought they were waging war. They were fumbling with matches while I carried a fire extinguisher and a blowtorch. That night, I wrote it down in the legal pad. Genevieve escalates, family manipulation, workplace sabotage. Outcome: neutralized. Each move they made was another brick in the wall of their own collapse. I poured a bourbon, sat in the quiet, and let the anger hum in my chest. Not wild, not boiling, but focused, controlled. The kind of anger that builds things, dismantles others, and never runs dry. The Hawthorns didn't waste time. By Saturday morning, they came in force. Clara, Genevieve, and Robert, the patriarch who usually stayed behind the curtain, lined up outside my apartment like a firing squad. They pounded on the door for an hour straight, rotating fists and voices, demanding, pleading, threatening. I didn't answer. I wasn't inside. I sat in my car across the street, engine off, watching them through the windshield. Project managers know the value of controlled observation. Let your opponents exhaust themselves while you conserve fuel. They stomped, shouted about shame, about family reputation, about fixing this before it's too late. People passed by, slowing to stare. Eventually, the Hawthorns marched off in a huff, Clara's heels striking pavement like gunfire. That afternoon, the next phase arrived. An envelope slid under my door. Heavy stock paper, the Hawthorn crest embossed at the top like it was a corporate letterhead. Inside, an invoice. Line items. Retroactive rent for Clara's shared residence. $28,450. Interior design consultation fee. $5,000. Emotional labor rendered during relationship. $10,000. Replacement value of engagement ring. $40,000. Total due. $83,450. Signature block left blank, as if daring me to add mine. I laughed once, low. The kind of laugh you give a child waving a toy sword. Monday morning, I carried the invoice into my lawyer's office. Margaret Albright, mid-50s, sharp as a straight razor in a gray suit. Read it twice. Then she leaned back and let out a full, hearty laugh that echoed off the walls. Amateur hour. Emotional labor? Are they serious? They're serious enough to put it in writing, I said. She tapped the page. Good. That means they just gave me leverage. False valuations, fraudulent claims, inflated appraisal on the ring. That's potential civil liability if they push it. You've been playing defense. Time to go on offense. Her confidence was contagious, but it wasn't showy. It was the confidence of someone who's crushed worse opponents without breaking a sweat. She slid the invoice into a folder labeled Hawthorne and snapped it shut. Let them send 10 more of these. The more paper they generate, the more rope they give me to hang them with. Next step. We draft a cease and desist. We set boundaries. And we make sure this ends on your terms, not theirs. I nodded, feeling the slow burn in my chest harden into iron. This wasn't about a breakup anymore. It was about dignity, control, and teaching people who lived off intimidation that some men don't bend. That night, I wrote it down in the legal pad. Siege attempt neutralized. Invoice received. Counsel engaged. Counterattack prepared. The Hawthorns thought they'd itemized my defeat. They'd only priced out their own. Margaret Albright didn't waste time. By Wednesday, the letter was ready. A cease and desist with the kind of precision only a seasoned attorney could craft. It wasn't flowery. It wasn't angry. It was scalpel sharp, every line cutting away another piece of the Hawthorns' imagined leverage. The letter did 4 things. Ordered Clara to stop using my apartment address for her new event planning business. Demanded proof of her supposed business expenses or face fraud accusations. Addressed the ring appraisal directly, citing the true valuation and warning against inflating numbers for personal gain. Scheduled a supervised pickup for her belongings, with conditions spelled out in black and white. When Margaret slid a copy across her desk, I read every line twice. The language was pure control. No wiggle room, no sympathy, no cracks for manipulation. It was the kind of document that turned shouting matches into silence. Delivery, I asked. Certified mail, she said. Signature required. They'll feel the weight when they sign for it. I left her office lighter than I'd walked in. Not happy, happiness had no place in this war, but steady. There's a special kind of satisfaction in watching chaos buckle under order. The Hawthorns' response was immediate. Bluster. Clara's texts pinged one after another. Rapid fire. You can't do this. You don't control me. My mother says this is harassment. You're trying to ruin me. I didn't answer a single one. Silence is a reply stronger than any argument. Then Genevieve called my father again, voice dripping venom. He called me after, furious. She says you're threatening legal action, that you're trying to destroy Clara's career. Is that true, Dad? I said evenly, what career? She registered a business using my address without permission. She inflated numbers on a family heirloom. That's not ambition, that's fraud. I'm not destroying anything. I'm protecting myself. He went quiet. Then his voice dropped into that low, gravelly register I'd heard my whole life when he finally respected a hard truth. All right, you're doing what you have to do. Don't stop now. By Friday, the Hawthorns had tried every angle. Guilt, rage, pity. Robert left me a voicemail trying the fatherly approach. Son, mistakes happen, families can mend. Let's talk this out. I deleted it without replying. These weren't mistakes. These were choices. Margaret called that afternoon. They've acknowledged the letter. Signed for it. That's the first real concession we've had. Good, I said. She chuckled. They'll spin and posture, but they won't cross what's in writing. You drew the boundaries. They know now you'll enforce them. That's half the battle. That night, I sat at my kitchen table with the binder closed and the legal pad open. I wrote, cease and desist delivered. Boundaries set. Silence maintained. I poured a glass of bourbon and looked around the apartment. The space felt different, like the air had shifted, like the walls had stopped bracing for impact. For weeks, my life had been reactionary. Now it was back under my control. When my phone buzzed again, I didn't even check the screen. Whoever it was, whatever it was, could wait. The war was already over. They just didn't know it yet. The day of the pickup came gray and cool, the kind of weather that makes the city sound muffled, like even the traffic doesn't feel like arguing. I'd arranged it through Margaret's letter, supervised, timed, with no room for games. Noon sharp. When the buzzer rang, it wasn't Clara. It wasn't Genevieve or Robert either. Two movers stood in the hallway, work shirts stained, dolly in hand, a battered van idling at the curb. One handed me the paperwork. "We're here for 27 boxes under Hawthorne." His tone was professional, detached. He'd done this before. I unlatched the door, pointed to the stacked boxes I'd packed myself. Clothes, books, kitchen trinkets, decorations. Everything labeled, sealed, and logged. Not a single thing missing, not a single thing extra. Precision isn't just for work. It's for dignity. The men loaded in silence. Cardboard scraping against metal. Tape crinkling. Footsteps echoing down the hall. No drama, no tears, no speeches. Just the clean removal of someone else's shadow from my space. An hour later, the last box was gone. The van door slammed, engine coughed, and they pulled away. Clara hadn't shown. Genevieve hadn't either. Their absence spoke louder than if they'd stormed in. They couldn't face the finality. I stood in the apartment, door shut, lock turned, chain secure. The rooms looked wider. The air smelled cleaner. It wasn't joy I felt, not triumph either, it was relief. The war of attrition had ended, not with shouting, but with silence. News traveled faster than their lies. Word got out in their social circle. How Clara had called for a break and returned to find no wedding, no leverage, no ring. How Genevieve's threats had bounced off legal walls. How the invoice stunt had become a joke at country club dinners. Their reputation, once ironclad, turned brittle. Invitations dried up. Prospects vanished. Clara's so-called business folded before its first client signed. Meanwhile, my life grew quieter, steadier. No more surprise calls to my father. No more HR meetings. No more pounding on the door. Just peace. That night, I walked from room to room, barefoot, glass of bourbon in hand. Each corner felt reclaimed, like the apartment was breathing again. The closet space, once crammed with her shoes, stood empty. The dresser drawers closed smoothly without resistance. The dining table held only my notes and my pen. For weeks I had been living in siege mode, documenting, defending, bracing. Now the siege is over, and in the silence I found myself again. Not waiting, not watching, not reacting, just living. I sat on the couch, legal pad open, and wrote the final line of this chapter. All belongings removed, silence restored, apartment reclaimed. Then I closed the pad, leaned back, and let the quiet settle like a blanket. The war was finished. The ghosts were gone, carried out in cardboard boxes. And I was still standing. Months passed before the last chapter wrote itself. By then, the noise was gone. No more invoices, no more doorstep theater, no more poison calls to family or HR. Clara had burned through her savings chasing both freedom and her ex, only to be left with nothing. Her social circle, those same friends she thought she'd impress with a grand wedding, turned their backs once the truth leaked. I didn't gloat. I didn't need to. Consequences handled the heavy lifting. The only thing that lingered was my grandmother's ring. For weeks, it sat in the bank vault, untouched, its weight not on my finger but in my mind. Every time I visited the branch, opening that box felt like opening a wound. The ring wasn't just gold and stone. It was memory, tradition, promise. It had been tainted not by what Clara did, but by the idea that I had almost let it become a bargaining chip in someone else's game. One Sunday, my cousin Michael came by. He's younger than me, quieter, the kind of man who doesn't push his way into a room. He'd been dating Sarah for years, steady and real. He asked me straight, over coffee, if I'd consider letting him propose with the heirloom. "I don't have much saved yet," he said, embarrassed. "But I want to do it right. And I promise, Leo, I'd honor it." I studied with him. His eyes didn't shift, his hands didn't fidget. There was no performance, just sincerity. And in that moment, I felt the anger that had carried me through this war finally loosen its grip. The ring didn't belong locked in a vault, shackled to betrayal. It belonged in a future built on something solid. The next morning, I walked into the bank, signed the access sheet, and opened the steel drawer. The velvet box sat there like it had been waiting. I picked it up, heavier in memory than in weight, and placed it in my pocket. That evening, I gave it to Michael. No speech, no ceremony. Just handed it across the table. "Take it," I said. "Make it mean something again." His face broke into the kind of smile men don't fake. Relief, gratitude, pride all at once. "Leo, I thank you." "Don't thank me," I said. "Just do right by her." That's all the ring ever asked for. When he left, I sat alone, bourbon in hand, and let the silence fill the room. For the first time in months, it wasn't heavy. It was clean. Clara thought she'd written the story when she typed those two words. "We need a break." But I'd written the ending. Not with shouting, not with revenge porn or public spectacle. With methodical consequences, with silence louder than rage, with actions that left no room for misinterpretation. I lost $12,000. A freedom tax, I called it in my notes. But what I gained was worth more. Peace, clarity, dignity. The ring was back where it belonged. My space was mine again. And the next project, the only one that mattered, was myself. Some stories end with cardboard boxes and quiet apartments. Mine ended with an heirloom redeemed and a future unchained. And for once, the path ahead looked clear.
Subscribe and stay one step ahead of cheaters. And trust me, the next story makes this one look like a fairy tale.